この焼きサーモン辛口で。はい、お願いします。Today we're visiting the Tsukiji Fish Market, one of the most famous tourist locations in all of Japan. The market was actually shut down a couple of years ago. Since then, they have reopened and now it's a completely different experience. We're here today to find out just how it's changed and if it's still worth visiting today. Tsukiji Market used to be world's largest seafood market and easily one of the most famous places in Tokyo for tourists to visit. It consisted of an inner market where world-famous tuna auctions were held. These huge tunas were extremely valuable and would sell for around $50,000 a fish, and people from all over the world would come and see this auction in action, until of course they were eventually banned from doing so. The market also had an outer section where many seafood restaurants and stores were located. And that's where we are today. The first thing you notice is that this place is clearly for the tourists. There's almost no local people in here other than, of course, the people selling this stuff. The other thing you notice is the prices are relatively high. They're clearly tourist prices. Like most things around here, even the cheap small things cost like 500 yen, and anywhere else they would be like 200 to 300 yen max. Even if you want to buy just a regular bowl of food from a restaurant around here, the prices are about 2 times or 3 times more than anywhere else. So sake can actually mean both the alcohol and salmon. So I guess if you come to Japan, you're gonna be drinking sake and eating sake. I don't want to sound overly judgmental because, yeah, sure, the prices are a bit high in here, but I'm sure most of the things are actually pretty good. And if you're not broke like me and you have some money to spend, this is definitely not a bad place to come, since you'll be able to try almost like any Japanese food that you've ever wanted to try in here. This was pretty reasonably priced, about $1, so that's not bad for this sized onigiri. What makes this place different from every other tourist location in Japan is that this place is fully made for tourists. Like wherever you go elsewhere, even if there's a lot of tourists and there's shops for tourists or whatever, usually those are like regular local locations with history, and then they realized, okay, tourists come here, let's put up some stores for them around here. But this place is fully made from ground up, from the beginning to the end, just for tourists. Nikuman de onegai shimasu. Arigatou gozaimasu. Nikuman is basically just a bun with a pork inside. Nothing crazy, but worth the price. This is actually just my second time in here. The last time I was in here was 15 years ago in 2009. Back then, a young Baptist who was still completely unaware of how big of a loser he would eventually become visited Japan with his friend. During the day, we wandered around Tokyo, and during the night, we slept in a wooden box. One day, we woke up at 4 AM to visit the Tsukiji Fish Market, and it was definitely an interesting experience. The one thing I can remember clearly is that the local people really weren't too happy with the foreigners walking around, taking pictures, and generally being in their way. I really didn't feel like I was welcome there or belonged there, and I can't really blame the local people. They were just trying to do their jobs while getting harassed by foreigners. When I was there, I tried my best to be respectful, but throughout the years there have been many people who haven't done the same.
I want to buy this. I'm not going to eat it though, it's just for content.
When some people act like this, it is no surprise that eventually everyone ends up being banned from entering the premises.
The inner market eventually moved from Tsukiji to another area in Tokyo, but that move wasn't really about tourists, though I can't say tourists really helped in that matter either. Even with the inner market gone, Tsukiji still remains as a huge tourist attraction.
Oh, that's actually pretty cool.
À son propre sanctuaire Shinto. C'est très petit.
There's a huge amount of tourist groups in here, it seems. I mean, why not? People want to come here, show them around. Though I have to say, personally, I've never been a fan of like guided tours. I haven't been on too many of them. A couple of times when I've like had to, because sometimes there's things you just cannot see without a guided tour. Nothing against the guided tours, but I also love the fact that like when you're doing things alone by yourself, sometimes you make mistakes. Those are like the best experiences that you can have when traveling, I think. Just making mistakes and figuring things out yourself. That's part of the adventure, I think. While I'm cooling here in the shadow, I'd like to remind you guys that since I don't really get any views, I also don't get pretty much any comments. So since I don't get much of them, I try my best to answer every single one of them. So if you'd like to ask any question or roast me for the way I look, leave a comment below and I'll do my best to reply.
I show you, this is very good. This is a sushi candy.
I actually think these shopkeepers here are brothers in arms for me in a sense, since I actually also used to work in a fish store back in Finland. But it wasn't just a regular fish store in a sense, because just like these places in here, it was in the middle of Helsinki and most of the customers were tourists. So just like these people, I sold overpriced fish to tourists. And actually many of the customers were Japanese. So that was a kind of a nice time to be able to use my broken Japanese every now and then to impress the customers. One thing I have a hard time understanding is that from all the things I've gathered, this place closes at 2 p.m. That is mostly a relic of the times when this place was an actual morning fish market for the local fishermen. I don't see any reason for this place to be closing this early anymore, since these are just regular tourist stores. Many tourists still ride the first train to get in here as early as they can, because that's what the information says online, and there's just no reason to come here that early. It might take like an hour to check everything out in here, but definitely if you're thinking of coming here and you see online that, oh, you need to come here 6 a.m, 5 a.m, whatever it's written there, you don't have to.
So what's the reason that everything changed around Tsukiji? Why did the inner market move? Was it simply because of the fishermen not wanting to deal with tourists? Well, no. Most fishermen were actually against relocating the inner market and were protesting against it till the bitter end. For a long time there was a plan to move the market somewhere else, simply because it was built in 1935 and it was never meant to become as big as it eventually became. Not to mention, the 80-year-old facilities had started to deteriorate. The Tokyo government wanted to demolish the old inner market and just move it elsewhere. So the inner market still technically exists, just in a different place. But the big thing is that Tsukiji still remains as the place people visit when they come to Japan.
In many of these touristy kind of places you see lots of stores selling like Wagyu or Kobe beef. And actually Wagyu or Kobe beef just by itself doesn't mean that it's high quality. I feel like they're just using those words to kind of try to trick tourists into buying bad meat in high prices. Like, okay, sure, there are places that actually say like A5 Wagyu and so forth, and maybe that is actual A5 graded meat, but many times if you're in these touristy places and something says like Wagyu, don't immediately think that it's gonna be super high quality meat, because it probably isn't. I went ahead and bought a milkshake. I just couldn't resist because I'm a sucker for milkshakes, and this was like egg yolk white chocolate milkshake, so I just had to try this one out. Oh my god, it's so good. Sadly, there's just so little of it. Honestly, one of the best parts about this place is the simple fact that there's people, but there's not too many people. Because like I complained in my Asakusa video, like I hate when I'm in the middle of huge amount of people and I just cannot walk anywhere, and it just feels, I don't know, it feels horrible. In here, as you can see, there are of course huge amount of people, but you can always kind of find your way without having to, you know, run away from the crowds. It's like perfectly fine. So out of most of the tourist locations in Japan, I really like that this one is relatively okay to be in, mentally at least for me.
You might have seen a lot of people talk about how over-tourism is affecting Japan at the moment. And sure, tensions have been higher than usual lately, and a lot of things have changed in Japan. Even me in this video have shown you what has happened in Tsukiji. But the thing is, Japan is still far away from becoming completely overrun by tourism, and it's still totally worth visiting. Some things have changed, but Japan is still nothing like many other tourist destinations where you have to bribe people and worry about getting scammed. If you have ever wanted to come here, now is the time. But how about Tsukiji? Should you come here, and should you buy anything?
I'm no professional in any of this, but I think you should maybe skip the sushi and sashimi, because I think you can get probably cheaper and even better sushi and sashimi from almost anywhere else in Japan. But this seems like a perfectly good place to try out those more exotic things that you might not be able to find as easily, like oysters and sea urchin and so forth. So if you were thinking of, okay, I have 3,000 yen, what should I spend it for? I think exotic seafood is probably your best bet. I guess the big question is that if you should come here. And well, since this new outer market area is actually pretty small, it doesn't take too long to walk around this area and kind of see everything there is to see in here. So if you have something else to do around here, definitely come here and check this place out. I really don't have much bad to say about this place. But if you're tight on time and you're only in Tokyo for a couple of days or whatever, I don't know, like, there's nothing here except the stores. And these kind of stores you can kind of find somewhere else too. If you're tight on time, I'd maybe skip this and go check out the temples and the nature and that kind of stuff instead than coming here. But if you have time, please check this place out. It's not bad at all.